I got something for you that PMI exam prep courses tend to leave out sometimes. I've taken the PMP, the ACP, and the RMP, and they all do the same thing. So this applies across the board. PMI doesn't just test what you know. They test how you think under pressure. And they have gotten really, really good at exploiting predictable patterns in human thinking to separate project managers who truly understand material and methodology from those who just memorize the processes. Now, before you say that's not really fair, I'm going to tell you it actually is, and it's a brilliant exam design when you really think about it. Because if you don't understand what's happening psychologically, when you read a PMI question, you're just fighting with one hand behind your back. Today, I'm going to expose the mind games that PMI plays, the cognitive biasness they exploit, and then give you a battle plan to beat them. So let's jump into it. First, let's understand what you're actually dealing with. Every PMI exam question has one correct answer and 3 distractors. But here's the thing around those. The distractors, they're not randomly wrong answers. They're carefully engineered to exploit specific vulnerabilities in how your brain is going to work when you get to those questions. So let me give you 4 distractors that you're going to see. First, you're going to get the technically true distractor. This answer is factually correct, but it doesn't address what the question actually asks. So your brain sees something accurate and wants to grab at it, but it's actually wrong. Number 2 is the what you do in real life distractor. This is the number one thing that I tell a lot of project managers, especially new ones going for the PMP. I've known too many that have failed this exam because they didn't know about this one while they walked in. And this is the answers that reflect how projects actually work in your experience. But that's not how PMI says they should work in the PMBOK. So the example I give to a lot of my students is that we are go-getters. We're project managers. Something wrong happens, you jump into action. But on the exam, that's not what PMI is testing. PMI wants you to stop and think. Think about what you're doing. So if you see a question, it's like, attack the situation, go take care of it. Stop. They want you to think about the answer. So you got to look for the one that says, I'm going to go review my risk register. Granted, you know what's in your risk register, but you need to review it first, which gets us into number 3, emotionally satisfying distractors. These are the one that feels right because it addresses the most obvious, dramatic problem in the scenario. And number 4, the keyword match distractor. This answer, it contains the terminology from the question, creating a false sense of alignment. So your brain pattern matches and says, oh, these words appeared. It must be related. But here's where it gets sneaky, because PMI also hides critical information in the question itself. They bury essential details in the middle of long scenarios. Not at the beginning, not at the end where your eyes naturally focus. They imply constraints without actually stating them. And they describe past events, but ask what you should do now as a project manager. So you have to be looking for all of these when you read your questions. So now let's walk through the cognitive biasness that PMI exploits most effectively in the exams. And I'm only going to focus on the top 3 that I tend to see trip most candidates up. First up, we have anchoring. Your brain is going to latch on to the first piece of information it sees, and it's going to use it as a reference point for everything else. So PMI is going to use this against you when the question opens with something dramatic. Your project is 3 weeks behind schedule. You're $50,000 over budget. Your sponsor is furious. A key team member just resigned. What should you do first? These terms anchor you on the emotional chaos around the question. The big numbers, the angry sponsor, but the correct answer, it usually ignores all that drama. And it focuses on the basic processes of project management. So you have to analyze the situation, review your risk management plan, Assess the impacts before taking action, something I just talked about. So to defend yourself when addressing these type of questions, after reading the question, ask yourself, what is this question actually asking me to decide? You got to separate the emotional noise from the procedural question and then address it and attack it using the information that you know is correct. Bias 2 is action bias. This is the tendency to favor doing something over nothing, even when waiting or analyzing is a better choice. PMI loves to test whether you understand that analysis must precede action. So many incorrect answers are going to be do something immediately, when the correct answer is assess, analyze, review, doing those first before jumping into the actions. So when the question asks what to do first, what to do next, you need to be deeply suspicious of answers involving immediate, dramatic action. Because PMI almost always wants you to think before you act. And this hits experienced PMs the hardest. Because again, in the real world, you've been rewarded for being decisive, for taking action, for solving problems fast. But PMI is testing whether you can override that instinct and actually apply the concepts accordingly as taught in the PMBOK. And bias number 3, authority bias. This is the tendency to attribute greater accuracy to authority figures. Your sponsor, executive, senior stakeholders. Questions are constantly going to put authority figures in your face, demanding something, and your instinct is going to be to comply with them. But the correct answer involves pushing back appropriately or following the process regardless of who is asking. So when an authority figure appears in a question, ask yourself, what does the process say? Because they're there to test whether you abandoned your proper methodology under pressure by some different authority figure. All right. Now, here's something that might surprise you. PMI questions don't just test your knowledge. They try to trigger mild stress responses. So when you read a high-pressure situation, your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for logical reasoning, becomes less effective. Meanwhile, your emotional center of your brain, it starts to light up. So now your brain literally is working differently when reading these stressful scenarios, and you're more likely to make quick, intuitive judgments. You're going to miss details, fall back on the pattern recognition instead of the analysis that I know you all know how to do. And that results in you choosing emotionally satisfying answers, which are usually the wrong ones. Okay, so now you understand the game PMI is playing. So let me give you the battle plan to fight back. I call this a quick 6-step process for exam day. Something that seems like it might take forever, but it really doesn't as long as you practice this in your practice exams. First, you gotta read the last sentence first. That is step 1, because this actually tells you what is being asked in that question. After that, then you can read the full question for context. And you'd be amazed how much clarity it's going to provide when you do this. Step 2 is you need to identify the question type. Is this question asking about a process sequence? Is it addressing a traditional, agile, or hybrid project? You gotta look at, are you discussing stakeholder management, risk responses, ethical behaviors? You gotta look for the category so you know how to assess the right mental framework going to that question. Next, answer before you start looking at choices. You've put in hours of work to prepare for this exam, so you should be able to formulate what you think the answer should be. So then when you're going through the answers, you're looking for the closest match. This helps prevent those distractors from hijacking your thinking of how they want to distract you from the right answer. And step 4 is we want to eliminate with purpose. So you need to go through each answer, all of them. Don't stop at B because it looks right. For each wrong answer, identify why it's wrong. And for your right answer, identify why it's right. Because if you can't articulate why, then you don't actually know why it's wrong or why it's right, which moves into step 5. Check your gut. If an answer feels obviously right, that might actually be a red flag. Ask yourself, am I falling for a biasness here? This is why you need to go back to the step before and read all the answers. Don't just get sucked into one because it feels like this is the right one. And then step 6, when stuck between two, go process first. If two answers seem equally valid to you, choose the one that emphasizes process, planning, assessment, all over the immediate action that, again, we talked about you never want to take. All right. Here's what I want you to take away from this today. PMI exam questions are hard, and it's not because the material is impossibly complex, but it's because they require you to override your natural thinking patterns. Your experience is valuable. Your instincts have been right many times in all your projects, but on exam day, you need to think like a PMI certified professional, not like the PM who you've trained to be by years of in the workspace reality. And the good news is, once you understand how your brain is being tested, you've already neutralized half the difficulty. The biasness only work when they're invisible. And now they're not, as long as you pay attention to what I just talked about. And if you want to go deeper on this and get more practice questions specifically designed to build your bias fighting muscles, then my PMP exam prep course and my PMP exam prep community, the PMP Prep Lab, are great resources for you. I'm going to leave a link to both of them down in the description below. So avoid these biases and go get certified. I'm Russ Parker, the Bearded PM, out.